Hey guys, Fukuno's Meister here with Andrew Please. With the release of the OnePlus 6, you're probably wondering if it's worth buying over the OnePlus 5T. How much better is it? And if you have the 5T, is it worth upgrading? All these questions and more will be answered within this comparison, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Let's start with the overall design. The OnePlus 6 has similar characteristics when compared to the OnePlus 5T. They both have buttons that are very tactile and have perfect placement, a headphone jack, dual rear cameras, but with the OnePlus 6 having it in the center instead of the far left corner, a fingerprint sensor with the 5T's being a circle instead of a rectangle, and an alert slider, but now it's on the right side instead of the left side for the OnePlus 6. Now, even though they have a similar form factor, I'm personally more attracted to the OnePlus 6. I do have the mirror black edition, so I can only speak on that model, but something about a glass encasing with aluminum accents makes a phone look really beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the Galaxy S9. Combine that with a massive, almost bezel-less display, and I'm already sold on which device looks better. However, that's not to say that the OnePlus 5T is a horrible looking device. The backside is all aluminum, making it durable, and it's just as comfortable to hold as the OnePlus 6 thanks to the curved edges on the back. On top of that, it's not as slippery or fragile as the mirror black edition. The OnePlus 6 just has a much more modern look thanks to that notched display and has a wider selection of models to choose from. But no matter how great a phone gets, every phone is still vulnerable to both damage and fingerprints, especially if it has a glass build like the OnePlus 6 mirror black edition. So I recommend you pick up a skin from Dbrand to give the device a bit more grip and make the phone a bit more personal. I'll leave a link right below that like button if you want to check them out. The most significant change on the OnePlus 6 though is the notch screen. Even though some people don't like notches, it's not that big. It only takes up a third of the display's width, and since it provided me with a few more pixels, I didn't mind it too much. Plus, if you can't stand notches, then you can go into the phone settings, display, and under notch display, you can hide the notch area. And even if you hide it, you still have a bit more screen real estate than the OnePlus 5T since the status bar with all of your notifications stays in that dark area at the very top. If we compare the displays, both phones have a 1080p AMOLED panel with a pixel density of around 400, so they're pretty much the same screen. The only notable difference is the size. The OnePlus 6 has a more prominent display at 6.3 inches and has a better screen to body ratio at 84%. You won't regret getting one over the other as both phones have accurate colors, decent viewing angles, giant screens, just the OnePlus 6's panel is a bit bigger and they both get decently bright. Still, if I had to choose between one or the other, I would go with the OnePlus 6 because it's the same display, but with a bit more screen real estate. Moving on to the software, both phones are running Oxygen OS on the latest version of Android Oreo. However, you can already choose to update the OnePlus 6 to Android P by flashing a developer preview recently released by OnePlus. So already the OnePlus 6 has the advantage as there's no word yet that the OnePlus 5T will get this update. We'll have to wait and see. Still, the stable version of Oxygen OS on both devices are great for everyday use. The interface is light, efficient, and very similar to stock Android with a few extra OnePlus features. Of course, the OnePlus 6 has a few differences to make way for that notch at the top. For example, the time is now on the left. You can modify the aspect ratio for certain apps, just in case if an app is not compatible with the notch, and you can choose to hide the notch. It also has new toast messages that pop up when I change modes using the alert slider, which I appreciate. Those are the only exclusive software features that come with the OnePlus 6 though. Everything else the OnePlus 5T also has. So if you have the 5T, don't worry, you're not missing out on any crazy exclusive features. The only advantage that the OnePlus 6 has in this category is that it will most likely receive a few more software updates than the 5T in the future. When looking at the performance, both phones are stellar. While the OnePlus 6 does have a newer chipset with higher CPU speeds, you're not going to see a massive difference in performance since the OnePlus 5T was already a really fast device. However, the 6 does come with speedier LTE speeds that support GB LTE, and I did notice a bump in speed when trying to load heavy web pages on the go. Other than that, both devices load apps quickly, animations and transitions are smooth and snappy, apps can remain in the memory for ages thanks to the 6 to 8 GB of RAM, both Face Unlock and the fingerprint sensor on each phone unlock the device in under a second, and I never experienced any type of lag on either device. Performance is pretty much a tie since you won't notice a huge difference when it comes to day-to-day use. For the camera, both devices feature dual rear sensors with similar specs, though their setups are slightly different. For example, both devices have a 16 megapixel f1.7 main sensor and a 20 megapixel f1.7 secondary sensor. The OnePlus 6 just has OIS now for the primary lens, so now you can get some stabilized 4K footage and non-blurry pictures at night. When taking photos on both phones, I didn't see too much of a difference since they do have a similar main rear sensor. Each phone pulls in a lot of detail with good exposure and accurate colors. There may be a few times the camera over sharpens the edges, and when you zoom into a busy photo you have a painted effect, but overall most photos taken on these two devices will come out looking solid. They're not going to impress you, and devices such as the Pixel 2 or Galaxy S9 will provide you with better results in more difficult lighting situations. The big difference though is the purpose for the secondary lens for each device. The OnePlus 5T secondary camera is used for low light shooting, while the OnePlus 6's secondary lens supports the primary sensor in portrait mode by improving the depth information. In my honest opinion, I didn't find much use for either of those cameras. The low light shooter on the 5T doesn't have a huge improvement on shots taken at night, and it only activates when you're in the darkest of situations. The OnePlus 6's portrait mode does work well, but I feel like most people don't use portrait mode that often, so a secondary camera just for that feature seems like a waste. Plus, I thought portrait mode was fine on the OnePlus 5T, so I feel like OnePlus could have chosen a better purpose for these extra cameras, such as a wide lens, or sticking with a telephoto lens like the one found in the OnePlus 5. As for the battery, both phones have the same capacity at 3300 mAh, but I am getting slightly better results from the OnePlus 6. On a usual day, I'll have Bluetooth, GPS, and Wi-Fi or cellular data enabled at all times with the brightness cranked almost to the max. On the OnePlus 5T, I saw a screen on time of around 5 hours, while on the OnePlus 6, I usually got around 5 hours and a half to 6 hours. The better battery life on the OnePlus 6 is probably thanks to the newer and more efficient ARM chips and Android optimizations, so even though there isn't a massive difference in battery life, it's still noticeable. Also, both phones still have the same fast charging mechanism, which was once called Dash Charge, but they can't use that name anymore due to copyright issues, so I guess we'll have to wait and see if they come up with a new killer name. Still, this charger will fully juice up your phone in around an hour for both devices, and it's still the fastest charger I've ever used. Lastly, there are some additional features that I enjoyed having on both phones, including Bluetooth 5.0, NFC, an extremely fast and reliable fingerprint sensor, large amounts of storage space but with the OnePlus 6 having better options, the headphone jack, and a very active community for rooting or ROM support. But there's also a couple missing features on both phones, such as official IP rating for water resistance, wireless charging, dual stereo speakers like on the Galaxy S9, expandable storage, and support for Sprint and Verizon. That being said, these two devices are neck and neck in most categories. Even though the OnePlus 6 made a couple of improvements and changes in its hardware, it's hard to see the difference since the OnePlus 5T was already such a great device. The OnePlus 6 just feels like a modernized version of the OnePlus 5T. It even has the same form factor. As of right now, an unlocked OnePlus 5T will cost you around $500 for the cheapest model on Amazon, while the OnePlus 6 has a starting price of $530. So for an extra $30, you're getting a bigger display, top of the line specs, more OTA updates in the future, and all of the features the OnePlus 5T already has. So here are my final thoughts. If you're in the market for a new device and you're coming from a 1 to 2 year old phone, then the OnePlus 6 is the better option since the price difference isn't so drastic. However, if you have the OnePlus 5T, I would stick with that device for now as you'll have a similar experience to the OnePlus 6. The changes aren't too crazy to immediately jump from one OnePlus flagship to the next. Anyways, that's a comparison of the OnePlus 6 and the OnePlus 5T. Let me know in the comments which smartphone you enjoy more. Make sure to give this video a huge thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Check out AndroidPolice.com for some great Android news, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.